Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you today and to see a packed house here to talk about what I think is one of the most important topics of our time, the future of the city, and what will it look like. We know the old rule in economics, demography is destiny. There's a corollary to that, I would add, that is the future of geography is density. We are going to live in more clustered, more dense environments. And this is not how human beings have lived throughout all of history. Until about 20 years ago, we were not an urban species. We crossed that line globally, and China is racing ahead. Within a couple of decades, we'll be 70% or more urban. The direction of change is clear. When people said during the pandemic, oh, everyone's going to leave New York, the city's dead. I'm a New Yorker. I didn't believe it. New York is alive, I'll let you know. Half of you are probably having a foot in New York, even though you have homes here. And so I'm here to, just as people said during the Great Plague in London centuries ago, the city is dead. The city is alive. But what will the future of the city look like? We are facing both the opportunities afforded by cities, economic opportunities, innovation, the chance to come together across cultures, but also the challenges that are posed by environment, by air pollution, by the very density that's bringing us together. How do we deal with waste? These are the challenges that the future cities will need to deal with. And I'm so delighted we have such a brilliant panel to help us think about this. Let me look at the most futuristic of these ideas. We're lucky to have from NEOM, Rayan. I'll come to you first. You're starting with a blank sheet of paper. How do you look at the question of reinventing the city of the future? And give us a quick sketch on what is the life going to be like that's different in that city of the future when we think about these challenges.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the FII for having me here. It's the second year I'm here, and it keeps getting better and better, so clearly making the right choice in Miami. As you mentioned, NEOM started as a vision by His Royal Highness at FII, actually at the first FII in Riyadh. And that vision was to create the city of the future. We went through multi-years of strategy setting, of defining how that city would look like. And we're now at a point where the master plan is ready and master plan is visible to the world. And there's strong certainty as well as visibility as how it's going to look. You asked about a glimpse of the thinking behind the city. Obviously, it will have many of the natural and normal attributes of a city, whether it's the beach life or mountain life, which we're lucky to have a diverse topography. But the revolution around the urban design and urban living is around the line. The line is being designed as a linear vertical city that has new ideas that's never been done before. The idea of a linear city has been there for a while, never kind of came through. The invention of cars and mass transportation sort of killed that as cities became a lot less efficient and urban sprawl took over. But if we were to start from scratch, which we are, we can think of how can we design a city for the future without any legacy, whether it's regulatory legacy or technological legacy or even physical legacy on the ground. And the line is that idea. It's a vertical, linear city, a lot more efficient from an infrastructure spend, a lot more sustainable, 100% renewable, but also walkable and healthier. Have direct access to nature. When people think of New York City or London or whatever, you think of a park, whether it's Central Park or Hyde Park, a park within a city. One of the revolutionary ideas around the line is having a city inside a park. Everyone has equal access to nature. Everyone has equal access to 100% renewable and sustainable energy. And these are some of the ideas that we're embedding. We can talk about mobility modes as well. The line is going to be free of cars. There's a transportation infrastructure that sits underneath the line for the end-to-end mobility, but there's also mobility cutting across at height. I don't want to take too much of the time.
But that gives us a glimpse, right? For a lot of people who aren't exposed to this, this is a radical reinvention. Obviously, with any new ambitious idea, there are risks. Will it get done? How much? At what cost? There's lots of things to be explored, but there's no lack of ambition, it sounds like. And in particular, in taking on some of these challenges of climate, sustainability, water, thinking about a circular economy. So you have put in place a number of ideas to try to do this. One of the ideas is the development of green hydrogen. That's a project that's actually for international export, and that has actually reached FID. So there's a tangible financial commitment from third-party companies like Air Products, the American company. What's the idea there? That it's not just about your own internal use? What's the concept there?
So I enjoy, as I was saying earlier, I enjoy kind of telling the story year in, year out, and conveying how the vision that was set up 6-7 years ago turned into life. And just in 1 year since we've had this session a year ago, we've closed the deal on the Air Products and Aqua Power, NEOM Green Hydrogen, $8.4 billion. We also are building a desalination business with Veolia and Ituchu that will be second generation in terms of sustainability. In addition to that, we signed a $10 billion JV with DSV on logistics to set up next generation logistics infrastructure, in addition to many investments that we made, including Regent, which Billy was talking about. We're proud to be an investor in that business to help experiment and as well as deploy next generation mobility infrastructure.
Right. So we'll see. I hope to come and kick the tires and see. There have been cities built that were laid out. Washington, D.C. is an example from whole cloth. Let's see how you progress. But you have the good fortune to start with a blank slate, and if I may say so, you have a rich uncle, and that helps a lot. Our friends here, they have to do it the hard way. You deal with existing infrastructure, often with retrofits, but that's where most of the world will live around the world. And maybe, Roger, can come to you first. How do you think about future-proofing the city of the future and buildings of the future? The built environment is a huge consumer of energy, emitter of emissions, but also, as we discussed, a place where people gather, where innovation happens, where creativity, commerce happens. How do you deal when you've got 50-year-old buildings or pipes that are leaky, et cetera? What's your plan?
You stole my punchline, because I was going to say to Rayan that he's had the luxury and the vision and the ambition to build something like NEOM, which is absolutely incredible, which is probably not something that most cities in the world have. Look, we are big investors in the infrastructure space, SGIP. So the things that we sort of focus on is largely on the airports, ports, rail, housing, water, renewables. So let me sort of, first of all, say thanks to the FII and our friends in Saudi to inviting us into this session here. I was in Miami about 8 years ago, so this is my first time back in 8 years, and the scale of development here is incredible. Right? So as you think about cities and cities develop, more and more people are getting attracted to join the cities. So if you think about the numbers, 56% of the world population lives in cities today. If you wind the clock forward by another 15, 20 years, that'll be 66 or 75% of the population living in cities. I think there are some statistics that about 2.5 billion more people will move into the cities at some point. So what you really need to do is to make cities resilient. That's the starting point, the existing cities. And people come to the cities to have a better standard of living. People come to the city to have better quality of life. So I start with, if you want to come into a big city, where do you get in? How do you get in? You get into an airport. So airport is a gateway into the city. And the better the quality of the airport, the better the connectivity of the airlines, the better the commercial product, the more the investment into the city. So look at the hub that has been built up in the Middle East. Yeah. And I know this how the ambitions in terms of making that into a big hub, a lot of capital is going to go into that space. So yeah. I think first point is making that the gateway of people coming in. The second thing, you touched upon this, is quality of life, quality of living. I think I heard David speak in the earlier panel about water, right? Super important, super critical. People say that it is, people assume it was for free, but it's not for free anymore. So you've got to repurpose existing infrastructure to make that more resilient. We are currently, through one of our portfolio companies, building a big site, or a wastewater treatment plant in Nice, in France. We own a company called Suez, which is a leading water and waste company. They're building a wastewater facilities. They're going to take sewage waste from sort of 26 different localities in and around Nice, process it to the highest standards with latest technology, to get it to a point where the microplastics in the water is 90% less than what it is everywhere else that you can see, and that becomes portable.
So we've had waste treatment previously, but you're upgrading the technology that's involved to the point where it's drinkable and clean.
And because water is definitely a scarce resource.
Sure.
And if you think about all the existing infrastructure in water, was all built 50, 60, 70 years ago.
Right.
A large part of that is getting wasted today from leaks.
Right.
So you've got to fix that
Right.
leak first, and then you got to improve the technology.
You fix the hole in the leaky bucket before you put more water in the bucket, so to
absolutely.
speak. Okay, so that's some important ideas. And I have to offer a correction. I said you're the only one with a rich uncle. We should note, you've recently been acquired by BlackRock, so maybe there's a rich uncle here, too, that can help you do some of
Not
these
yet.
things.
We haven't yet closed the transaction.
The deal is closing, presumably sometime soon. Let's turn to you, Barry. Well, how do you think about this challenge? You got a lot of assets, but you also, somewhere on the horizon, there's climate risk. Is it making its way onto your books yet, or is it a distant concern? How do you think about this?
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here in my hometown. Welcome. After 8 years of loneliness, you should have invested here. You would have made a lot of money. If you want to see the cities of the future, you should go to Saudi, because Diriyah Gate, is a perfect actual combination. I'm friends with Jerry Inzarello for decades, and whether it's content of museums, theaters, wide roads, hotels, affordable housing, all well planned and laid out. It's an incredible advantage to have the opportunity to plan a city and learn from thousands of years of not doing it so well. But my focus is really on existing cities and what's going to happen to them in the future. And I think, first of all, what city are we in? But if you take a typical old city, let's take New York, today one of the big questions are the office buildings in these cities and what's going to happen to them. And you're seeing the first wave in the United States. It's quite different around the world, but in the United States, we have not returned to work in the way we did. They have in Europe and Asia and in the Middle East. The buildings, I was in California on Monday, and I was in some state offices, and they're in there 2 days a week. You're seeing the pain in the U.S. office markets really from the lack of return to work and what it means for demand for office, but you haven't seen the impact of AI, which you're going to hear about in a second, which is the dismantling of industries that are tenants in these office buildings. And the AI is coming after the white-collar jobs, whether it's the bank, the insurance company, the analysts, the advertising agency, the law firm. And I have a feeling we're going to see hundreds of millions of square feet of excess office space around the world, that some of which won't have another use. It will have to be taken down and repurposed. So there's going to be a great opportunity. How you're going to do that in the States is probably tax credits from the federal government and the state, because it doesn't make sense right now economically to convert or tear down a building. And I don't think we've seen the impact of AI. Recently, a law firm in New York renewed a 700,000 square foot lease. But I think it's coming, as you'll hear from everyone today and tomorrow. So we think, and then you look at cars, and I think about electric cars, self-driving cars, getting cars off the road, reducing density, because as these cities get more and more crowded, you got to make the cars, not everyone coming to the city is going to be able to have a car. Mm-hmm. So whether it's mass transportation or Miami built a tram that is actually, when it was first built, wasn't used, and now it's very important to bring people around. And the city's planners, there's a big burden on them to think about density. There's an area here called Wynwood, which is on the other side of the tracks, and they let everyone build whatever they want, and it will be a nightmare to get around. The roads are one lane in each direction. Every time an Uber stops, you're going to spend 35 minutes getting to your house or going to your restaurant, and that's not going to work. So you'll see good planning and poor planning, and it's really upon the urban planners. And then, of course, what's built here and in Europe, the buildings in Europe are all green. They're going green. They're green we built the most sustainable building in Frankfurt. It's 90% leased in 6 months. The building next door is not, and it hasn't had a single lease. So there's a move of tenants and investment to the greener buildings, and then how do you retrofit the existing buildings that you have? It's both operating them more efficiently with new prop tech technologies. It's actually, as you know, we're 70% of the emissions in cities comes from the buildings. And the U.S. is catching up. Institutions will lead the way, not the buyers, and capital will drive capital to cleaning up these buildings. Or you build state-of-the-art buildings and they attract tenants and get the higher rents, and so capital will move to that. So, I think whether you operate it well, you can mandate the use of green power, you can use the roofs for solar plants and equipment to generate power, feed it back to the grid. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be
You're
interesting.
going to need
but
some role for government in this.
you're going to need
This is the
help.
free market
And
solving
the
the problems.
redoing of these cities, you're going to need help.
Yeah. We're just out of time, but I want to do a quick lightning round at the indulgence of our hosts. If we were to get back together in 2050 for FII, to have a conversation.
2050?
2050. Think the future.
I'm in a wheelchair.
And we'll be very fit and healthy, of course, in that age. Which city of the future do you think we should host that in as that example of the sustainable city of the future you guys are working on? I'll start with you in reverse order. Let's come back. You think about this. Where should it be?
Well, obviously NEOM, right?
Well, let's see.
But other than present company excluded, I'd love to see, probably a city like London, what it looks like in the future. I think it'll be very interesting to see how these cities adapt to the needs and communities of the world.
Londoner, what do you say?
I think that city doesn't exist today, is my view, because...
That's an easy out.
No, it's not an easy out. I actually think for us to get to the point where what is happening in NEOM today, where the sun shines, there's abundant power, there is cheap power, you get to the point that it is sustainable. Because what's going to matter to the generation that is coming, my daughter, for example, and the next generation, they all care about green. So the city that can capture that is the city where people are going to flock to, which is why the hopes for something like what he's building.
Are you going to surprise
But maybe it's not him. Maybe it's something else in the future.
I'm not going to surprise you.
No surprise.
But my only request would be before 2050, hopefully.
Before 2050, there we go.
We'll have the FII there.
Okay, so there's a man who picks one of the oldest cities on Earth, one that doesn't even exist, and the one who is hoping to build the city of the future. Please join me in giving a round of applause for our wonderful panelists. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.